Hi, thank you for joining me. This is Donna from Clever Crafting. So this is the card that we are making today. I thought I'd show it up front so you'd know where we're going with it. So I've called this a puzzle card because it reminded me of the little puzzles we used to have as kids that had all the numbers you had to get in order. So to make this card today, we're going to need 3 pieces of coloured cardstock, 3 pieces of lightweight cardstock, can be any colour, that's fine, and 1 piece of black. So we're actually making like a geometric background, which I just love, and it's really handy, and this will actually make 3 geometric backgrounds. So the other 2 we'll be able to put aside for other projects. So to start off with, what I am doing is adding some post-it note tape, and that's the 3 pieces of coloured cardstock together with just some post-it note tape to keep it in place, and I am actually going to cut it at random angles. So there is no rhyme or reason to this, except that I did want this an uphill slant for the snail, but other than that, you can just cut this wherever you want it to be. So I'm cutting all 3 pieces together in my Tim Holtz trimmer, you can see there. And now we're just going to put one together. So I've grabbed one of the top pieces, the green piece, and I'm popping it in place. So all of my cardstock is 10 centimeters by 14.3 centimeters, which is the number 2 metric rectangle. So because I started with all the same size, it's really easy to put all of this together. And as I mentioned, that's a lightweight cardstock that I've got in the background. The cardstock that I'm using on top is just, I think, American Crafts cardstock, so it's not really over thick. It is textured just to give me a little bit of interest in the background, but you can see that all I'm doing here is piecing it together like a jigsaw. I'm actually going to do that with the other 2 pieces straight away, and I just didn't think you needed to see me do that. Then there they are, completed. So I've just grabbed a hold of my pencil here, and I am marking, you can see, from the outer edge of the complete card in about a 1/2 centimeter and at the end of each of the joins. So this is going to help us with our cutting. So before we cut, we need to make some little dots, foam dots. If you've got foam dots, you don't have to worry about this too much, but I like to make my foam dots myself. I'm just using my Crop-A-Dile here because I want them small this time. I've got 1mm double-sided tape on some release paper, and I've just cut them out. You saw me do that there. All right, so now I'm just grabbing, my metal ruler and a knife, and I've lined it up so it's just a little bit on one side of one of the joins. Now you would have noticed that I put my little foam dot on there because I don't want to cut it wider than my, not that much wider than my foam dot. And I'm just cutting down from one pencil line to the other pencil line. So I'm actually not cutting my cardstock or anything in half. I'm actually cutting, I'm going to refer to them as tracks out of the card. So you can see that that's cut there, but it's still joined at the ends. So now I'm going to put my ruler on the other side, make sure that it's not too wide for my little foam dot, and I'm going to cut it. Now the foam dot actually has to fit in this little track that we're cutting, but you just don't want it heaps wider than it because it will move around too much and you will lose the puzzle card effect. So I've just used my scissors to trim those off. It's not a big deal because these parts will be covered with little embellishments, and you'll see that a little later. So you just saw I popped that dot in there again to make sure that it was right. And now I am doing along the next join, and I am doing from the first track, so cutting through from the first track to the pencil line again. Now I made a little boo-boo here. I didn't cut all the way through before I pulled my ruler up, and then I didn't put my ruler back in the same place, but it's okay because we were able to tidy it up, and then I ended up just using my scissors to snip that a little bit. Now once again I'm going on the other side, and I am going to trim that. Obviously this is really sped up at this part, but I just didn't feel that it was necessary to go really slow actually. Okay, and then I'm going to use my scissors again to trim off the ends. Excellent. We finished with that piece for the moment. So what I've done is I've just used my 1-inch hole punch, and I've punched some scrap black cardstock, and I'm just putting a tiny bit of glue in the center. Now you don't want a lot of glue. You want glue to make it really solid, but you don't want it so you have to wait forever for it to dry. And I've just put my little foam dot in the center of that there, and I've put them aside to dry. Now here I am with my stamping platform, and I am stamping in my greeting. So this is from this month's stamp set, again, the Bugs and Kisses stamp set. And I'm using some VersaFine ink, and I'm using some embossing folder. Now, I actually double stamped this because of the textured nature of the cardstock. I like to leave my embossing powder on there for a second. I don't know if it makes any difference, but it makes me feel better, so that's got to be a good thing. And I'm just heating it up, and you can see it change color there, which is always so much fun, isn't it? Doing that. I actually use Wow Superfine Clear Embossing Powder if you're interested. All right, so this is the embellishments that we're putting on the front. So I've stamped and coloured in a butterfly, a bee, and a snail. Then I've proceeded to cut them out with the die, and then cut out 2 other plain coloured pieces, and I've stuck them behind out of cardstock. And this will actually add some thickness to our embellishments. I've just popped that black dot, one of the black dots, at the back of the card with the little piece of foam popping up through. I've taken off the release paper. I've added a tiny bit of glue on this again, and I am just going to put my embellishment on the top. Hold it down for a second, and then do the same with the other 2. Just sped this up so we can see. The hardest part of this particular process is getting that little bit of release paper off those dots, man. But I use my awl to push down in the center, so it kind of lifts it up a little bit at the corner, at the edges, so I can pick it up. And you can see there that what I did is I just made sure that those pieces were moving. Now, these are not supposed to move on their own. They're supposed to be firm, but not, you know, immovable. So, and I'm sticking that there. Terrific. We're going to flip it over now, and we're going to work on the back for a minute. So I've got this little box of, these are cardboard strips. So these are from an appliance, but actually they're from a motherboard box. My husband fixes computers, so we always get motherboard boxes, computer motherboard boxes, and I cut them into strips because I use these now instead of foam tape a lot of the time. Not all the time, obviously, but a lot of the time. So, and I am just sticking this around, thin strips around the outside edge. Now, if you used double-sided foam tape, and that's what you've got to do this next part with, you need to use double the thickness of the foam tape that you use to make sure that the little pieces don't get stuck. So this is the, I'm just positioning these. You can see that what I'm actually doing here is I'm actually making, I guess, guard fences for my tracks. Let's say that that's what it is. So I'm using my cardboard, and I'm making sure that it's only about 1 mil from the edge of my dots, but I need to put it there to make sure they don't move out of sync. You know, that they can't move too much, that they can move enough for us to be able to move them around, but not too much so it will cause a problem with us using, you know, the movement on the card. So when I was talking about the double-sided foam before, what I'm meaning is that whatever you use to stick down here at this part has to be thicker than the foam dot that you used for your mechanism, for the little slider in the center of those black dots. In this case, I know that the foam that I use is 1 millimeter thick. I get it from Bunnings. And these cardboard pieces are about between 1.5 and 2 mil thick. So these are a little bit thicker, so this is going to work. If you're not using cardboard like I'm using it, then you need to make sure that you double up your foam. So if you used 1 millimeter thick foam for your dots, then you need to use 2 millimeter thick foam for this part, or you need to use 2 layers of your 1 millimeter foam. If you have any questions about that, just pop it in a comment below and I'll get back to you on it. Okay, so now you can see how I'm making those tracks, or those rails, we're calling them the fencing or railing, around the outside of the tracks. So my little 1-inch dots can move around freely. I then off camera added some extra pieces. Here's a picture of it here, you can see, and you can see that I can move those around. So I'm just adding some glue onto the top of my cardboard. Obviously, if you're using double-sided foam tape, you just take off all of the release paper. And the black piece of cardstock, which was also cut with the number 2 metric rectangle, is the perfect size, and you can just glue it down on the back. So because we've done that, you can't see the black dots because the background and those tracks are black. And this is how this works. You can see that I've just moved the bee up. and I've moved a snail down. So I've swapped the position of the snail and the bee, but I actually want the butterfly where the bee is, and I want the bee where the snail is currently. So I am moving these around. As I said, it's a little bit like, those number puzzles. And there we are. How beautiful. Fancy being able to move all of the pieces around on your card. So at the edges, just to cover up that little cut and the pencil marks, I've just popped little flowers. Everything is encased, and I'm going to pop some glue on the back of that black card stock. Way too much glue again. Don't know why I keep doing that. Anyhow, I am going to check to make sure my card is correct, because boy, I have put them on the wrong way so many times. And I'm going to place that onto my card base. Of course, the advantage of using glue there is that you can move it around. All right, so once again, here's a closer look at the card. I really hope that you enjoyed this and that you learned something today. I would love you to try this card. It takes a little while. I think this video in real time was about 45 minutes, so expect it to take a little while, but it is really worth the effort. If you do so, I'd love you to share your creation with us over on the Gold Coast Crafters. I will put a link for that below. It's a lovely supportive group, and we are growing every day, so we'd love you to join us. Until then, I'd really love you to stay safe and have happy crafting.